Some years ago, a British journalist, John Diamond, was diagnosed with cancer and turned his condition into a weekly column. Rightly, he maintained the same perky tone that characterized the rest of his work. Rightly, he admitted cowardice and panic alongside curiosity and occasional courage. His account sounded completely authentic. This was what living with cancer entailed. Nor did being ill make you a different person, or stop you having rows with your wife. Like many other readers, I used to quietly urge him on from week to week. But after a year and more, well, a certain narrative expectation inevitably built up. Hey, miracle cure! Hey, I was just having you on. No, neither of those could work as endings. Diamond had to die, and he duly, correctly, in narrative terms, did. Though, how can I put this? A stern literary critic might complain that his story lacked compactness toward the end. Tendency of some commiserations to sound unintentionally final, either by past tense or some other giveaway of a valedictory sort, sending flowers not as nice as it might seem. I'm not fighting or battling cancer. It's fighting me. Brave? Ha! Save it for a fight you can't run away from. Saul Bellow. Death is the dark backing that a mirror needs, if we are able to see anything. Vertiginous feeling of being kicked forward in time, catapulted toward the finish line. Trying not to think with my tumour, which would not be thinking at all. People try to make it sound as if it were an episode in one's life. Oncology/ontology. Under the old religious dispensation, heaven would simply sentence you to be lavishly tortured and then executed. Montaigne. Religion's surest foundation is the contempt for life. Fear leads to superstition. The big C, though, seems mercifully to have been dumped, and I'm glad nobody wants to slaughter any endangered species on my behalf. Only okay if I say something objective and stoical. Ian remarking that a time might come when I'd have to let go. Carol asking about Rebecca's wedding. Are you afraid you won't see England again? Also, ordinary expressions like expiration date, will I outlive my Amex, my driver's license. People say, I'm in town on Friday, will you be around? What a question. Cold feet. So far, only at night. Peripheral neuropathy is another of those words like necrotic that describe death in life of the system. And you lose weight, but cancer isn't interested in eating your flab. It wants your muscle. The Tumor Town diet ain't much help. Worst of all is chemo brain, dull, stuporous. What if the protracted, lavish torture is only the prelude to a gruesome execution? Body turns from reliable friend to more neutral to treacherous foe. Proust? If I convert, it's because it's better that a believer dies than an atheist does. Not even a race for a cure. Paperwork, the curse of Tumor Town. Misery of seeing oneself on old videos or YouTubes. Gradual disclosure, not yet a problem for me. Michael Corder's book, Man to Man. You can get so habituated to bad news, the good news is like Breitenbach and the cake. Consolations of saying, well, at least now I won't have to do that. Larkin good on fear in Obad, with implied reproof to Hume and Lucretius for their stoicism. Fair enough in one way. Atheists ought not to be offering consolation either. Banality of cancer. Entire pest house of side effects. Special of the day. See Szymborska's poem on torture and the body as a reservoir of pain. From Alan Lightman's intricate 1993 novel Einstein's Dreams, set in Bern in 1905. With infinite life comes an infinite list of relatives. Grandparents never die, nor do great-grandparents, great-aunts, and so on, back through the generations, all alive and offering advice. Sons never escape from the shadows of their fathers, nor do daughters of their mothers. No one ever comes into his own. Such is the cost of immortality. No person is whole. No person is free.
Afterward by Carol Blue. On stage, my husband was an impossible act to follow. If you ever saw him at the podium, you may not share Richard Dawkins' assessment that he was the greatest orator of our time, but you will know what I mean, or at least you won't think, she would say that, she's his wife. Off stage, my husband was an impossible act to follow. At home, at one of the raucous, joyous, impromptu 8-hour dinners we often found ourselves hosting, where the table was so crammed with ambassadors, hacks, political dissidents, college students, and children, that elbows were colliding and it was hard to find the space to put down a glass of wine, my husband would rise to give a toast that could go on for a stirring, spellbinding, hysterically funny 20 minutes of poetry and limerick reciting, a call to arms for a cause, and jokes. How good it is to be us, he would say in his perfect voice. My husband is an impossible act to follow, and yet now I must follow him. I have been forced to have the last word. It was the sort of early summer evening in New York when all you can think of is living. It was June 8th, 2010 to be exact, the first day of his American book tour. I ran as fast as I could down East 93rd Street, suffused with joy and excitement at the sight of him in his white suit. He was dazzling. He was also dying, though we didn't know it yet, and we wouldn't know it for certain until the day of his death. Earlier that day, he had taken a detour from his book launch to a hospital because he thought he was having a heart attack. By the time I saw him standing at the stage entrance of the 92nd Street Y that evening, he and I, and we alone, knew he might have cancer. We embraced in a shadow that only we saw and chose to defy. We were euphoric. He lifted me up and we laughed. We went into the theater where he conquered yet another audience. We managed to get through a jubilant dinner in his honor and set out on a stroll back to our hotel through the perfect Manhattan night, walking more than 50 blocks. Everything was as it should be, except that it wasn't. We were living in two worlds. The old one, which never seemed more beautiful, had not yet vanished, and the new one, about which we knew little except to fear it, had not yet arrived. The new world lasted 19 months. During this time of what he called living dyingly, he insisted ferociously on living, and his constitution, physical and philosophical, did all it could to stay alive. Christopher was aiming to be among the 5 to 20% of those who could be cured. The odds depended on what doctor we talked to and how they interpreted the scans. Without ever deceiving himself about his medical condition, and without ever allowing me to entertain illusions about his prospects for survival, he responded to every bit of clinical and statistical good news with a radical, childlike hope. His will to keep his existence intact, to remain engaged with his preternatural intensity, was spectacular. Thanksgiving was his favorite holiday, and I watched with awe as he organized, even as he was sick from the effects of the chemotherapy, a grand family gathering in Toronto with all his children and his father-in-law on the eve of an important debate with Tony Blair about religion. This was an occasion orchestrated by a man who told me in the hotel suite that night that this would probably be his last Thanksgiving. Not long before, back in Washington, on a bright and balmy Indian summer afternoon, he excitedly summoned his family and visiting friends on an outing to see the Origins of Man exhibition at the Museum of Natural History, where I watched him sprint out of a cab and up the granite steps to throw up in a trash can, before leading his charges through the galleries and exuberantly impressing us with the attainments of science and reason. Christopher's charisma never left him, not in any realm, Not in public, not in private, not even in a hospital. He made a party of it, transforming the sterile, chilly, neon-lighted, humming and beeping and blinking room into a study and a salon. His artful conversation never ceased. The constant interruptions, the poking and prodding, the sample taking, the breathing treatments, the IV bags being changed. Nothing kept him from holding court, making a point or argument, or hitting a punchline for his guests. He listened and he drew us out and had us all laughing. He was always asking for and commenting on another newspaper, another magazine, another novel, another review copy. We stood around his bed and reclined on plastic upholstered chairs as he made us into participants in his Socratic discourses.